Hi, my name is Mark DeLuzio, and I'm the CEO and President and CEO of Lean Horizons Consulting. And I'd like to introduce to you Kathy Miller, who's a longtime colleague and friend, and Shannon Carrolls, who is a friend, but not long time. and But we got to know each other. They both came to me a little over a year ago, or whenever it was, to ask my opinion about the book that we're going to talk about today, uh, Steel Toes and Stilettos, and get my opinion about whether or not it was a good idea. And I thought it was a great idea, number one. And what's this book about? Well, I'm going to let the ladies kind of tell us that. But the premise is, what their view and their experiences were as successful business executives transforming a company using lean methodologies and philosophies and tools, right? And first of all, doing a transformation alone is a story in and of itself, because there's not too many really good ones out there. But they did it as two women in pretty much a man-dominated world, and they have faced different challenges than most men would, and I'm being one of them. And I've also seen a lot of what they told me about and what they talked about in industry. I've mentored a lot of different women in the world in their corporate endeavors and otherwise, and it's not, what they're writing about is not necessarily a one-off example. Okay, it's representative of a lot of things that I've seen in my 30 plus years in industry, and by the way, in a lot of different industries around the world, but also especially in the United States. A lot of industries, whether they be insurance, any kind of manufacturing, any business you could think about, the dynamics that they talk about and their experiences are very representative of what people see. So when they asked me about the book, I said, well, geez, it's great that you're going to get that story out there, and hopefully that we could, get this book read not only by women who will definitely resonate with this, but with men, because I think if there are, diversity and cultural issues that we need to kind of evolve from, it needs to be a collective approach with both men and women, as we look forward on this. So I know Kathy from quite a few years ago. We worked closely together. She was one of my clients, and she's phenomenal at what she does. And the fact that she brought on Shannon must mean that Shannon's phenomenal as well, because she would not bring somebody who wasn't phenomenal on. And plus, she hired me too. So Kathy, I'm phenomenal. So anyway, I have a lot of respect for Kathy and Shannon, and this book is phenomenal. I've given them some input on the book, and it's ready to go. I think when, Kathy, in April, is that when it's going to be released?
It's out right now.
Oh, it's out right now. I'm sorry.
It's out right now. It's available on Amazon and Routledge and Barnes and Nobles, anywhere you buy your books.
Yeah, just a little comment. I did not get my signed copy yet, but just I don't want to kind of,
It's coming.
So anyway, I want to turn it back over to Kathy and Shannon, and maybe start with the question. Why did you guys write this book? What was your whole emphasis for doing this?
Well, Mark, first of all, thank you so much for that lovely introduction, as well as your support and friendship all along the way. I've learned so much from you back when we worked together more closely and through this whole process. And you are the consummate of what male allies are all about in the workplace. So really, really appreciate it, all the insight we've gained from you. So just to tell you a little bit about Steel Toes and Stilettos, it's a true story. It's a story of transforming multiple plants over multiple years, from traditional batch run organization, to lean manufacturing. And Shannon and I were just reflecting on it one day, in a social setting. We said, you know what, this is a pretty good story. We should really tell it, because the transformations were really successful, and due to so many people, not just Shannon and I. I happened to be a general manager at the time, responsible for P&L. She was the lean transformation leader for the organization that we had. So we were the two leaders of it, but it really took everyone in the organization to get the results that we got. And so we thought, let's share it, because there's an order of approach associated with the lean tools. But as you know, Mark, it's a lot more than just the lean tools, right? It's really about the people. And can you paint a vision for the people of what a future they've never seen before looks like, and bring them along, have them help create it and help sustain it? And so it's really, we thought we'd share this story so people could see the order of approach, how and why we approached it, learn from some of our mistakes, and hopefully learn from some of the things that went well. We also wanted to aspire future female leaders, quite honestly, where we grew up. And when we grew up in manufacturing, there were not a lot of female role models for us. So we're hoping we can serve as that for future generations of leaders, both male and female, but really a world that's more inclusive.
And the book really, it can be read as an implementation guide for people who are looking for that type of tool set and looking for those concepts and did that order of approach. But it also reads like a novel. So we weaved in our experiences as leaders, women, wives, mothers, and what that all looks like in the manufacturing world for us. And so it weaves in our real lives with our manufacturing plant lives. And then we also weave in our relationship that Kathy and I developed, which, as Kathy said, in our experience, not only were there not a lot of female role models, but very rarely were there two working simultaneously together to drive something like this. And the friendship and relationship we developed is really pretty extraordinary, we think, of where we've come from where we started. So it definitely reads more like a story than a how-to manual, which makes it a little different than the other types of lean books that have been out in the market.
One of the things I think I'd be really interested in hearing from you is, and I'm gonna base this on my experience. Okay. So I've been married 41 years. We raised two boys. Both my wife and I went to school to get our master's degrees while we were raising two kids and jobs and careers. I was traveling around the world. Like Kathy, I'm sure you have. I'm not sure, Shannon, if you have, but we all travel all over the freaking place. And it was really hard to hold it together. And so it was the conversation, and she worked, I worked, and so it was like, okay, well, we need to kind of, split the responsibilities up of the household. So, I would do grocery shopping and all that. But at the end of the day, and I'll be quite honest, okay, the responsibility was still hers to handle the household and handle the kids. It really was, even though I was helping, and that's the problem, I was helping if I was self-critical, but I wasn't. Maybe it's more subtle, but I didn't bear the responsibility as much as, hey, I'm helping you. I went grocery shopping. Well, and she would say, well, geez, why are you telling me you're helping me? You eat too. Okay. Okay. And so I had this male dominated attitude towards, I'm the father and I'm the man and you're the woman. And, even though I was very, I think, supportive from that respect, maybe the total support wasn't there. Now I've seen this with other women that I've worked with in business, where the stress of the job, and as you guys know, there's a lot of stress, especially in manufacturing, it was not totally shared with the stress that you had of raising your family or your home life. And so it wasn't the same. Okay. I have one person I mentored whose mother was on her all the time. You're traveling too much. Well, he was traveling too. Okay. But it was her getting all the pressure. Right. So I'd like to understand a little bit, like, what do you guys see as the difference here? Because, as much as I try to be as helpful as possible, it was not, the whole paradigms didn't get broken, and the pressure was still more on my wife than it was on me.
Yeah.
Okay. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
did you guys feel that too with your lives and your families and your jobs and your careers?
Well, I
and
think
all that?
it's a really interesting concept. And we do talk a little bit about it in the book, this concept of you can have it all. And that's what we were told as women. You can have it all. You can have a family, you can have a career. And then this whole concept of work-life balance. And Kathy and I said, God, we could write a whole book on just that. And this pie in the sky thing that we were striving for. And quite frankly, at least from my perspective, I often felt that I was failing all the way around, because you can't, there's never a 50-50 in life, right? So there were times where I think my marriage took the backseat to my job, and then there were other times vice versa. And then my family as well. And when I had a son, and what I had found was actually, people would say, God, you have a 3-year-old, like, how are you going to do this job and do that? And I was like, I don't know. I just am going to figure it out, I guess.
But your husband never would have gotten that question. That's my point.
Correct.
Right?
He probably would not have. He probably would not have. And
He never
actually,
would have said that.
most
Yep.
of the women who were at my level or our level or higher, a lot of their husbands did not work. So that was the difference from what I saw, and why those questions kind of came up. But I will say this, and I'll speak for both of us. Both of our husbands also work in manufacturing, so they understand the stress and the requirements that come with the job. And we have probably two of the most supportive, participative husbands that we could ever have asked for. And that really aided in our success.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't have done it had Jeff not been as supportive as he was. But I remember early in my career, I went to a particular country that will stay unnamed, and a gentleman picked me up, and we're driving on the highway, and he said, "So how old is your daughter now?" And I said 3, and he said, "Well, where is she while you're over here?" And I was like, well, I'm hoping, like, the neighbors will take her in and feed her or something while I'm gone, So you get these sort of questions that may be innocent enough, but sometimes feel a little accusational, and I do think, like Shannon said, there were times that our husbands got the shortest end of the stick, right? Because you have 10, 12 hours a day in a plant, you're visiting a foreign country, you're tired, you're jet lagged, you have to call your children first, make sure everything's set for tomorrow. Then your husband may get a 15, 20-minute phone call with the highlights, and you just move on. I think, though, one of the particular things about the male-female experience with travel is I do think there's a little bit of a double standard from the standpoint of, I was always cognizant of the fact that I loved going out and having dinner with my colleagues. But if they were going to the bars to drink together and that sort of thing, I always felt there would be like reputational damage if, I participated in those sorts of things where people would make, comments or suggestions. And so that level of interaction that sometimes the men had when traveling, I self-limited myself from, because I really valued reputation. And I do think there's a little bit of a double standard there.
Oh yeah. Well, I think the whole book is about double standards, which is a good thing, right? And it really is. I mean, and by the way, just aside, I won't tell you the country I was in. I don't want to discredit the country because it's a good country, but I was with a female employee that worked for me at this particular company. We had dinner, and one of the leaders said to, "Hey, Mark, can you have, let's just call her Mary for lack of a better word. Can you have Mary go back to the hotel because we want to go out with you tonight at the strip club or wherever club he wanted to take me?" Well, first I wouldn't have gone anyway if Mary wasn't with me. But being a corporate officer, that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing anyway, period. But they asked me that, can you just have Mary go back to the hotel because we're going to go out, and I said, no, I'm not going to do that. So there is a double standard. But the reason I wanted to bring all this up, Kathy and Shannon, is because now let's go back. Now let's kind of transition into the job. Okay, so now we set the stage with, you've got this external double standard that you're dealing with, right? With how people treat or view career women, and whether or not they really view you as a career woman, and they look at you more as a wife and a mother that's kind of doing this too. You might even be called selfish for doing it by some. I've heard that. But now that you've got that outside stress, if you will, if you want to call it that, or consternation, now you got to come in and deal with the inside. Okay, now you're on the shop floor. Now you're changing people. You're going into a company, and I do happen to know some of your companies that you work with, and you're going into traditional companies that are in the 1970s and they're thinking, and you're trying to bring them out of that into something brand new and different. And so you've got all that dynamic going on, and you're doing it as a woman, especially when, you know, most of the people you're trying to change are probably men. So you've got the outside stuff going on with you. Now you got to go inside and deal with that. And not only deal with the change itself, but do it as a woman in leadership position. So tell us how that all kind of panned out for you. And some of the, because your book has a lot of stories in it, which are pretty good. And I just wonder if you could just talk about how you guys, you know, maneuvered in that thing, and the fact that you were successful, right? So, which is pretty cool. So I don't know, just throw it out there and let you guys kind of give us your perspective now that you're on the inside. So
yeah. So I will say this. I really, when I walked into a room, to a team, to a staff I was on, or a staff meeting, I was many times the only female, you know, looking back on it retrospectively, but I really didn't dwell on that at all. I really just stayed with, you know, I'm here, I have a seat at the table because I've earned it, either as a leader or a team member. And I just worked on, you know, contributing to the best of my ability. I didn't feel different or like a token when I walked into a room, unless somebody made a comment. Yes. And what I will say is there's a lot of innocent comments that come up that make you feel like a token. I don't think too many people are really malicious in the traditional way that you think about it, that don't think women are equal, you know, in terms of their ability to contribute. I think there may be some of that in the population. I didn't encounter that so much, but I have received so many comments about, wow, a female vice president of operations, or wow, you know, a female director of global operations. And I think they meant it in a good way and as a compliment, but it really felt minimizing to me. Like, why are you reducing me to one aspect of my identity, you know? And it makes you feel like a token, even though they may be giving you a compliment on having broken that glass ceiling or whatever, whatever it is. I don't think anybody, for the most part, especially later in my career, meant it maliciously. But I hate the pie charts, right? I hate sitting in an HR meeting and they're like, oh, look, we have 12% female engineers now. Aren't we great? And it's like, you know, I know you have to keep track of those things legally, but it makes you feel like a number and not a person contributing, and really magnifies the token aspect, even though people, I don't think maliciously do that.
Yeah. And I think just pivoting off what Kathy said in the beginning about, you know, her and I never talked about being women at the plants, to be honest. Like, it just never really came up. We didn't focus on it. And in my whole career, same thing. I was very often the only woman in the room. And did I notice? Sure, I noticed. I mean, it's a very obvious difference. But I also I feel like we gained that respect from people, that it didn't necessarily matter. We were just good at what we did. And we spent a lot of time, though, building relationships and trust to get to that point. Now, whether that's more or less than a man, I can't say, but we spent a lot of time on relationships and people, which I think has helped us be more successful in some of the things that we've done, because we build that trust in our teams to go out and execute.
There are actually empirical studies, Shannon, and I think I might have talked to Kathy about this, that do suggest that women gravitate more towards people, and men gravitate more towards things. And there's a bell curve, right? Because you're not going to always, nobody's
right,
either or. You know, you got the bell curve of the flavor there, but that is psychologically studied. That's been proven, right? And the theory is that's why you see more women teachers, more women social workers, and less women in the STEM fields, right? But the thing is, like when you talk about, well, geez, you know, nobody ever really said that. I'll give you one example, and it doesn't have to be with gender. In this case, it has to be with race. So I have a good African-American friend that I was served on the board with for Hillenbrand, and we were talking about this one night, and he said, it's interesting how prejudice comes out. I'm not even using the word racism. It's not racism. It's more prejudice, how people think. He said, when there's a Black candidate being interviewed, somebody might think they're saying something nice, and they may say, well, he was really intelligent. Okay. But they wouldn't say that if it was a white guy. So the paradigm is Black people are not intelligent. Okay. That's kind of the message. Whether or not they meant it or not, that's the message that got sent to my friend. Okay. It's like, why did you say that? Why did you say he's intelligent? He was really intelligent. It just sent the wrong signal, So that's, I think, what you kind of, an example, maybe what you mean when they might say something very favorable, but the fact that they even said it, the litmus test is, would they have said that to a man, right? And so that's just something you notice after a while,
Yeah.
But Mike, here's another question. So today we're in an age where diversity is a big deal, right? It's a big deal. And I my personal opinion is so many different companies are doing it because they want to be viewed as being diverse. And so you can have a diversity officer, you can have your KPIs on diversity, you can do your pie charts that you talked about, Kathy. I hate pie charts anyway. I like pie, but I don't like pie charts. Blueberry is my favorite. But so you got all that going on, and the real question is, how genuine is it, right? And so then you get things like, let's just take United Airlines, where they say our next 5,000 pilots are going to be minorities or women, right? Now you face this. You're two successful women, and I know you are. I mean, I know you, Kathy, and God, you're great, right? But do you fear, because of the push on diversity today, that somebody's going to say to you or Shannon, yeah, you got that role because you're a woman, not because you're good, because somebody had to check off a box for that pie chart, okay? And now it's almost a discredit to you. Like, oh, no matter how good you are, yeah, Shannon wouldn't have gotten that job if they didn't have this diversity push. You know that's going to happen. No, I know it happens. I already had these conversations with people that would say that. He got that job because he's Black. She got that job because she's a woman. Okay. And in some sense, there's some truth to that. So when you take somebody who's uber talented like you guys, do you feel that's a disservice to you?
It certainly can be. It
Yeah.
certainly can be.
Well,
and I'm not against the diversity push, but when when people aren't genuine about it, it's not good. I don't think. I think it does talented people like yourself. This is my opinion anyway, but I was just wondering how you guys felt about that.
Well, and you can't have a diverse and inclusive culture forsaking any gender, race, ethnicity. You can't have that, right? So everybody needs to be included to be inclusive. And Kathy and I talk a lot about that. And what's interesting and also hard and sad about this whole measuring and everything is that Kathy and I probably separately, we've both run businesses completely separately outside of this project we've done together. And we've had very diverse teams, which was not by design. It was by hiring the best person for the job. And I had someone say to me once, oh, you had a female quality manager before. I figured you'd hire another girl. And I said, well, no girls applied. So I couldn't hire another girl. And I said, and I will always hire the best person for the job, which led to more diverse teams. And Kathy has said this in the past, and I'll just repeat it for myself as well. We hope that's because they want to be part of the vision that we're painting and our leadership style, and less because of our gender or any other reason, because besides that.
Yeah. Well, do you think though that so you basically just made this statement, which I would tend to agree with. I picked the best people for the job, and I ended up with a diverse team. So if you think about people who really say they're picking the best people for the job, but don't end up with a diverse team, what does that tell you?
Well, it could be about, a lot of it's about the leader, right?
Mhm.
So if they don't, if there are some people who are much more comfortable, and leaders included, being with people that are just like them. And so
Yeah,
that's where
yeah.
these metrics start to come into play. It forces people to step outside of their comfort zone if they aren't already willing to do that.
The other study that I saw is that, again, this is all statistically, women are more creative than men, more creative. And, men who like things, women who like people, let's say if you agree with that paradigm or that study, if you will. So my experience has been that the leaders, primarily male, who make it to the upper echelons, will portray themselves as these big creative animals that want to make change. But in reality, they're kicking their feet all the way through the change cycle because they don't want to change. They're conformist more than they are not, right? And so the statement you just made, I think, resonates with me a lot, Shannon. People hire people like them, okay? Which basically means you're not going to have a diverse team.
Mhm.
I mean, right? What do you guys, Kathy? What do you think about that? I mean, if you hired everybody like Kathy Miller, would you have a diverse team? Lord knows if you hired everybody like Mark DeLuzio, it would be a disaster. Okay, you need diversity, you need challenging, you need different thinking, right? You need creative, you need conformist, you need innovative, you need people, introverts, extroverts. There's no right or wrong profile, but if you hire everybody like you, so the fact that you ever said that you're looking for the best is a compliment to you because you really had your blinders off in that regard, right? And which I think is good. And that's kind of what this book is about, I think.
Yeah. And, it's all about diversity of thought, right? So, anybody watching this might be like, Kathy and Shannon are alike because they're female. But we give a talk about, we did the Gallup um, personality traits and strengths survey. And she and I are very different, right? Regardless of the fact that we're both females, right? I'm more of a strategic thinker. She's more of I can get things done no matter what type of person. And so, regardless of gender, you want diversity on your team. That's just one factor of diversity, right? Um, how I always led my teams was, I want to have all different types of people. I want idea people. I want doers. I want those sorts of things. Because if you don't, you're going to get stuck in one phase of a strategy, right? Because everybody's idea people, so you can't get anything done, or everybody's executors. So you're just like making little incremental improvements instead of big improvements. And I used to do things to force people to really get involved with improving the business in areas they weren't familiar with. There's a story in the book about my marketing manager. Whenever I had an accident in the factory, as a general manager where I had all the functions, right? Not just the manufacturing piece, I made my entire staff go look at what happened and review what the team there had come up with as corrective actions. And then we would brainstorm other things that we could do. And some of them came kicking and screaming, but you know what? The marketing manager always had the best ideas because he was a whole person and he did so many things outside of work, right? That brought practical applications into work. And so I always valued that. And honestly, I didn't look around the room and be like, okay, I got 3 females and 7 males. And when people would actually point that out to me, I found it offensive, which is another story in the book because I'm like, oh, do I? Like, because I've just picked a whole bunch of really great people that complement each other and challenge each other. And I didn't want a bunch of yes men because I don't always have the best ideas, And so I think that tended to breed creativity and a mindset throughout the entire organization that attracted great candidate pools, when I had openings on the staff.
What would you both hope this book accomplishes? So the book's out already.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say 3, 4, 5 years down the line, what would you like to see be different out there today? Although, it's a tough question because There's no KPI on it. There's no measure. I mean, you can get all the diversity data you want and say, hey, we're hiring more women, we're hiring more minorities. Okay, great. But do those metrics really tell us the real issue, right? The real, that we solve the issue you're talking about. But what would you hope for this? And who would you hope reads this book as well, and that type of thing? What's your feelings around that?
Yeah, we have a lot, but to start, I think when we initially started to write this book, we were writing it for the young female who might consider getting into STEM, manufacturing, any of those types of technological jobs that, it's can be very technical, but it can also be the other side of it too. It can also be about leadership and people and processes, and not necessarily just that technical piece. So you can have both in that type of role. And we want more young women to want to get into this industry because we love manufacturing. I mean, all three of us have been in it forever, and we keep coming back to it. We love it. We love being able to provide jobs for people at all levels in an organization that are meaningful. And we want to keep that. And so we need more people and more women to come up through that. That is kind of how we started thinking through this process. That's who we were targeting. But then Kathy, do you want to talk about the other side of what we also hope this book will do for people?
Yeah, it can also serve as a lean transformation guideline, right? So people who are lean professionals of all types, right, can look at it and look at the order of approach and the people aspect that was developed alongside the tools, right? So it's not just about young females, although we would love for them to do that and realize that they can be successful and true to themselves. They don't have to conform to stereotypes, right? But by using their creativity and being their unique selves, they have contributions to make. But any lean professional can read it and say, okay, this is where they started, right? They set the vision and started by getting everybody involved in working in the business and on the business and those sorts of things. And these were the aspects of inclusion and psychological safety and all the things along the way that help them sustain themselves and make healthy businesses. And, we wrote it in manufacturing because that's our background, but I think there's a lot of lessons for anyone in any kind of business leadership. I really do.
Yeah, I think so. There's so much of it can transfer to just life, right? I mean, well, it's interesting. We didn't say this earlier because you just brought in the lean thinking part of this, and it does serve as that as well, as a nice model of how to approach a transformation. But one of the things that we always talk about with lean, well, I take that back. We said we always talk about. One of the things we should always talk about with lean is the whole notion of respect for people, right? And Toyota kind of pioneered the thought about that. But it's funny, Toyota doesn't talk about respect for people. They don't talk about. I mean, they have that all laid out, but it's how they act and how they carry themselves, right? And when you asked me to get involved with this book, and I started reading your transcripts over the years, over the months. One thing that struck me was that if you don't, this book to me has to, if you're really serious about lean, and you said it, Kathy, very well, it's not about technology and process and standard work and cell design and single minute exchange of die and value streams. Yeah, it's all about that. But who are the people that have to change? Is it when you say I got to change the factory? No, I'm not changing the factory. I'm changing the people.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't sound right, changing the people. The people are the ones that have to embrace the change. And then the factory is a byproduct of it. Like you create a cell, you create a value stream, you reduce your lead times. And just by not focusing, I just had this conversation before I got on this call with a company in Europe that they had this big grandiose business system, and the word people wasn't even on the list anywhere, right? It was like, well, yeah, okay, good luck. A bunch of engineers are going to go out and re-engineer your company. Good luck with that, right? And so when I read this book, I said, well, this is a key part, a real key part. And again, let's forget about the lean part about this for a minute, of the respect for people aspect of lean, right? And if you don't get that part right, it doesn't matter how well you know value stream mapping and standard work and one piece flow and quality tools and problem. It doesn't matter, because if you don't get that right. So as I read this, this is a kind of like a missing piece, I think, in the RFP, respect for people discussion. I really do. And so anybody who's really serious about that and really affecting change has to read this, because it's a perspective that we just kind of think we know about. We think we assume we know what the issues are. When I read it, it was like, I learned stuff. I like, whoa, I thought I was pretty good at knowing this stuff, right? I didn't realize that. And I didn't know that. And, it's like a part of my development, my education. So in a lot of respects, you guys had your target for this, but I got a lot out of it as well, And so I think the book is phenomenal, and I wish you the best of luck with it. And I just think that anybody who's really serious about affecting change has to get this on their bookshelf. So
Thank you,
Thank
Mark. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it.